Youngpreneurs Podcast, episode number 126 with your host, Victor Ahipenny. What's up, world? Another day, another podcast. And today I've got my good friend Brett Campbell on the show. And he was previously on an earlier episode in the year where he shared about his upcoming Authority Academy. Now we've got Brett back, and he's going to answer some pretty cool questions and give us an insight into not only how he created a book that is about to be published and that you can get your hands on, but how you can find what you're passionate about and create that into something more meaningful than potentially what you're doing at the moment. And if you are doing it, how you can improve your focus and put a framework around that. Because he's about to release his book called Right Now. Why Not You and Why Not Now? And it's super awesome. I've got my hands on it right now. Excuse the pun, and I am just delved into it, and it's so far amazing. Brett is full of knowledge. He's walking the walk and talking the talk, which is absolutely what we love on the show. So if you want to find out more about him, we've got all the links to Brett's site where you can pick up the book over at passiveincomeyoung.com/EP126. And you can also sign up for our free training on how to start your first online business for $0. And if you enjoy the show, jump over to iTunes, leave us a rating and a review, and that would be super appreciated. And don't forget to check out Facebook, where we have a 500 plus, probably 600 or 700 plus people group where we mastermind and bounce ideas around with each other about everything that we're doing in our businesses. It's absolutely free. It's a booming community, and I really want you to be involved. So request to join that. But grab a pen and paper. There's some awesome knowledge that Brett drops that's going to help all of you. And don't forget to check out his book and grab yourself a copy as it is well worth it. All right, guys, keep living life on your own terms.
You're listening to the Youngpreneurs Podcast, the number one resource online for under 35-year-olds, where we chat twice a week to the most inspiring entrepreneurs in the world. We have it all. If you're looking for inspiration, guidance, or actionable tips to help you transition from that job into a business, or if you're ready to take that business to a whole new level, then this is the place to be. Get ready to live life on your own terms.
Hey, Youngpreneurs. Welcome to another episode of the Youngpreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Victor, back again, and we have got one of our past guests on. I thought I needed to get Brett Campbell back on. I heard some awesome feedback. I know a lot of you loved it, and prior to it, we were talking about Brett's Authority Academy. It was a 2-day event that I went to on the Gold Coast with a group of friends, and it was absolutely amazing. And you'd think that the majority of us would rest on our laurels and just sit on that course, but Brett has been up to a ridiculous amount of things in the last couple of months, 2 or 3 months since we've chatted, and I just wanted to get him back on because I think there's a lot of learnings that many of you can get out of it. Welcome back, Brett.
Brother, thanks so much for having me, man. Welcome. It's good to be back. Good to be back.
What have you been up to?
Look, like you said, a number of things. Since we last connected, officially when you came down to the Authority Academy event, I've been in the pipelines. I was talking to you pre-recording here. Just created my first book called Right Now. Why Not You and Why Not Now? And that was actually something that I wrote back in November. So in November 2015, I sat down, and it was one of those things. When I talk to most people, I go, do you think you have a book in you? And everyone, I reckon, has a book within inside of them. And for me, I'd probably been feeling that for, a good 12 months. And it was getting to a point where it's like, Brett, when are you going to write that book? Brett, when are you going to write that book? And it got to a point where I was like, created this framework. And mate, I'm happy to even go through, the process of how we've done it. But I created a framework, and I sat down and wrote the book within 2 weeks. I'd spend maybe about 5-6 hours a day writing, and knocked it out in 2 weeks. And that was back in November. But what's happening since the start of this year, we've launched, like you mentioned, the Authority Academy, but we've also launched another brand called Unleash Your Greatness, which sort of ties into the book, this concept of life's too short to not be living to your full potential. And it's all about, creating strategies and frameworks and actionable ways on how people can actually start living a life to their full potential, instead of just hearing about it all the time and, reading books that tell you the philosophy of it all, and it, gives you a bit of motivation, but there's always that thing lacking, which is how do you actually then take what I've just read here and go and implement it into life. So, mate, number of things. We've also got a retreat coming up in September, where we're taking a group of people over to, it's called the Unleash Your Greatness Bali Escape. So it's sort of a bit of a carry-on from our one-day Unleash Your Greatness events that we ran throughout Australia at the start of the year. So, mate, plenty going on.
Wow, it sounds super intense. With the book, so I'm, at the time of this recording, I've got a book away at the editors, which it'll just be an online book, but I'd love to hear because I obviously haven't launched or gone through a lot of the processes. It's kind of in first draft. For people out there, first off, and I did an episode a few months ago, why did you want a book, and what are kind of some of the benefits of getting a book out there?
So why I wanted this book was because I wanted to get this message out there. And there's just something different about holding a book in your hand versus watching a video or attending an event. There's just a different psychology that wraps itself around that. So for me, I'm coming from a background where literally I didn't read my first book until I was about 25, I think it was. I'd be the guy I went through high school, and what I didn't know at the time, I'd created my own form of speed reading back in high school. I just didn't know it. I'd be the guy who would read the cover, read the contents, go to the back of the book, skip through some pages looking for keywords, and then create basically my own synopsis of what I thought the book was about. Somehow passed through school doing that. But it was, for me, there was just this, and I'd be lying to say if, people who are writing books, it's a great, it's a really great business card, so to speak. It's a positions you as an authority, and I'm all about this, with our Authority Academy. How do you position yourself as a highly respected and highly paid authority? And it's all about, and it always comes back to, getting your message out there. And I have been I would say a mediocre reader, still am. I love listening and consuming podcasts. That's how I learn. And, there was this thing within inside of me as well. I think there was a challenge of going, you know what? I bet you none of my high school teachers would have ever thought I could write a book. and you know what? Probably neither did I. But it was just made another modality to get the message out there. But I wanted to do it differently than just writing a book, because, anyone now can become an Amazon bestseller. And I think the book space within itself is starting to lose a little bit of credibility, in the sense that someone goes, "Oh, I'm a bestseller," and it's like, what does that actually mean? I sold 20 copies on Amazon, they give me bestseller status. It's it's sort of that thing that I was talking to you about previously as well, about how industries have a bit of a grey cloud over them. And I sort of wanted to do this the right way, and right way to me. So, there's no right or wrong way, but for me, it was, I wanted to do it properly. So, we got picked up, I was very lucky by Morgan James Publisher. It's a New York publishing house. They pick up 100 books a year out of 5,000 applicants. It's the same company who, they did Russell Brunson's book, they did Jeff Walker's book, Brendan Burchard's book. So, pretty pumped to be able to, be in line awesome with that. So.
Yeah, I crack up because I was similar. I didn't speed read. I read a book when I was about 13, and then I found the tapes or the DVDs when I got to about 15, 16, and just watched those for any books in English. And it wasn't until I picked up a book about 23, 24 that I started diving in. But I mean, it's quite interesting what you say about the kind of the grey cloud. Like with my book, I'm only putting it on Amazon. It's got a ridiculous amount of awesome content, like how people can reach out to influencers to build their own credibility. So similar to what I've done with this show, by being able to connect with people. But the Amazon #1 bestseller will just come with it. And I eventually want to do a book that's in hardcover. So this is, I guess, my test run. My test run on, do I like writing, and can I keep doing it? And I know that'll hopefully lead into some speaking events and different things, which is something that I want to do. But with the actual process, what you said you were spending about 4 or 5 hours a day. What did that kind of look like? Was that 3 hours on Facebook, 2 hours on Instagram, and 20 minutes of writing, or were you pretty?
Nah, mate. I literally sat on my lazy boy seat. I actually had two different spaces where I wrote. I sat on my lazy boy, had the legs up, leaning back, had my little MacBook 13-inch on my lap, and I just had a Word document open, and I was just powering. It's a very the story isn't really exciting on how I wrote it. You know how you listen to some people talk about their writing and how did you do this? I actually think people overcomplicate the shit out of it. Like, to be honest, and there was another place where I wrote was actually at a coffee shop just down the road from me. I'd go down, spend a couple of hours, bang out, a few thousand words. And when I say it took me a couple of weeks, that was probably, if we work it out, maybe, 45, 50 hours. Now, again, I'd be doing everyone a disservice if to say that was it. As soon as I'd finished that last word, that was all I did on the book. I've had to do read-throughs. I've had to throw paragraphs out. I've had to rewrite chapters, but essentially the core component of the book was there. And that's, for most people, the hardest part. I actually found the process quite easy. It wasn't as, when you listen to so many other people on podcasts talking about books and how do you write it and, it takes so long and this and that. I actually didn't find that to be a hard process. I thought, and this is the reason why I think, is because I was so clear on my message. I was so clear on what I wanted to say. It just came out.
So let's talk about that message. What's the biggest message and how you're breaking it down in the book? So for everyone out there who's going to jump out there and get it, what is the message that they'll be getting? Well,
the book's called Right Now. So, I mean, that gives a little bit of telltale signs. The subheadline is Why Not You and Why Not Now? And the book was, and this is where I guess the moment where I was like, what, I need to start taking action now was, mate, I'll tell you, I'll share the story with you. And I talk about this in the book in actually a lot more detail, but this is why, and this will really land as to, the title Right Now. So I was sitting at home one night and I rang up my friend, my mate back in New Zealand, and his wife had just gone through her last round of chemotherapy because when she was 25, she got diagnosed with breast cancer. She came out the other end. She was in remission for a couple of years. Everything was fine. She had a headache, went to the doctors. They found out that she had brain cancer. So she was just going through the last treatment for that. And I was just ringing him up to say, hey, look, when should I come over and visit you guys? And he get very optimistic. He's like, well, mate, there's no real hurry, you can come over in a month, couple of months, whenever you want. And because I'd been able to build a business that could sustain me, doing what I wanted when I wanted, it was sort of like, well, I'll come over in a couple of weeks then. So I was sitting down, went to book the ticket on the computer, went to check out, and this overwhelming feeling came over me. And I didn't really know what it was, but I got back on the phone and I said to my mate, oh, look, I'm going to come over in a couple of days. He goes, well, okay, that's all right. You don't have to, but, if you can, sure, why not? And so I booked the ticket, and that was on a Thursday night. I flew over Tuesday night, and I got to their house Wednesday morning, walk up to the gate, and he was walking out to meet me, my friend, and his face looked different. I could see something on his face just looked different. I was like, oh, what's up? And he goes, nothing too bad. We just had a bad sleep last night, and she didn't get much sleep, so she's probably in and out. And I was like, well, that's cool. I've come all the way over here. Let's just go inside and hang out. Went inside and picture a very small wooden house, like a little old school house in New Zealand. You know them well. Little wooden shack, pretty much. And I walk into the lounge, and because she'd just gotten out of hospital, she was still on a bed, adjustable bed, and the adjustable bed couldn't fit through their hallway because the house was so small, so she had to sleep in the lounge. And I walk in, sit down beside her, and grab her hand. It was ice cold, and she was nodding off, and then all of a sudden her eyes just opened. She looked at me and she said, "Oh, Brett, thanks so much for coming." And I said, "No sweat, not a problem." And mate, 3 hours later, she passed away in front of us. And whatever you call the universe, however it works, whatever the case may be, things were just lining up so weirdly that I just couldn't even explain it. And it wasn't until we had the funeral, we went through the process, and I was sitting on the plane on the way home, coming back home, And it was this feeling within inside of me, because a lot of my friends back in New Zealand were like, oh, they're still in a job doing the same thing, just slightly better. And they were saying to me, oh, man, you must be so stoked. Life's awesome. You're doing so well, helping, hundreds of thousands of people around the world, making good money, got a nice house, all of these things. But for me, I was sitting there and I just felt incomplete. Like I didn't feel like I was on the right path. I was just a couple of degrees off. And that's where, for me, this feeling came to me again. It was like the same intuitive feel I had when I was booking that ticket. And, I asked myself the question, it's like, why can't I? And why am I not doing what I truly want to be doing on this planet? Because at the time, we'd built a franchise, we've sold, we've got 45,000 customers around the world. Like most people look at it and go, geez, aren't you happy with that? But it wasn't that I wasn't happy with what we're doing. It was just, I just felt a little bit incomplete. And I'd ask myself, why are you not doing what you want to do? And for me, it's to spread the word, to spread the noise, to get the message out there that life's too short to not be living to your full potential. I've got visions and ambitions to be speaking on stages in front of tens and tens of thousands of people to get this message out there. It's one of those things that I truly believe so wholeheartedly in, that I'll scream from the top of a rooftop and not worry what anyone thinks about me. And when and you can connect with that, then that that's what you're meant to be doing for the rest of your life. And the question came to me, why not me? And why can't I do it now? Like, what are you waiting for? And that's where the concept of right now comes in. It's why not you and why not now? There's no tomorrow, there's no yesterday, it's now. You can decide to live the life that you want to live, or at least start taking steps. And that's what this is about. It's about taking that first step. Because once you take the first step, all the other steps, again, build upon each other and momentum gets created. So...
And that's the crazy thing. Like, I talked to some of my friends when I was home not so long ago, and things float around like, oh, you're so lucky, or what you're doing. Oh, I could never do that.
We are lucky though. Let's look at this for a second. We are lucky. If we take the concept of lucky simply means when opportunity meets preparedness, right? When opportunity meets preparedness. If you're not prepared, then the opportunity that presents itself to you, you're not going to be ready for it.
Yeah.
Lucky is when you are able to take that. If I said to you, hey, Victor, I've got 2 tickets tomorrow. We're off to Ibiza. Do you want to come?
Yep, I'm there.
You're there, so you're lucky. If you said, if you couldn't come, are you still lucky or not lucky? You're not lucky because you're not prepared. You're not, you weren't prepared for that opportunity. And so next time someone says that to you, pull that out on them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I found it interesting because I said to them, and like some of these people were people I studied physio with, and I was like, well, I failed a year, so I'm obviously no smarter than you. Like, I'm no intellectually book smarter than you. So, it's really not that you couldn't do it. It's that you don't want to take that first step, or you haven't got the tools to take that first step, which it sounds like that, your book is really going to help a lot of people with, is taking that first step into doing. I mean, I heard on Tim Ferriss interviewing Tony Robbins the other day. I think he said something like, success does not equal fulfillment. And that's where I think a lot of people, they say, oh, I'm successful because you've got a franchise and helping all these different people and you're making good money. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're completely fulfilled. It means that you're doing really cool things. Doesn't mean that you're unfulfilled by the same token, but it doesn't mean you're living to your highest values or your highest, your ambitions.
Correct. I call it the life's okay syndrome. And that's what it was for me. Life was okay. Like, I wasn't struggling. I was, I wasn't in despair. I wasn't, like running around lost and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life type scenario. It was just that I was in that mediocre, like life was okay. I could have easily continued doing what I was doing. But the pain within inside of me was like, oh, geez, the more I kept having this discussion with myself and as I was creating the framework for this as well, for the book, it was just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's actually been a great experience. The fact that, I essentially initially wrote it, what's this coming up, 8 months ago now. And I know around March or something, I was like, no, I need to wipe out a whole like couple of chapters there because I've got new stuff, So I think I really want to get the book out now before I have to rewrite it again because I just And this is that concept though, is once you start the journey, once you start this personal growth journey, and you embark on it, and you go all in, I think it's such an amazing process, and you talk about how you mentioned there, this book, or could it be a first step for someone? The reason it was created was because I was, going through a transition in my career where I was coaching and mentoring so many people on how to build their business. But really, it wasn't the business tools. It wasn't the how do you build Facebook fan pages. It wasn't how to build funnels or how do you use the latest sales strategy to close a client. It had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with this concept of, number one, are you truly connected to what it is that you're currently doing? Because a lot of people might find, and the book is basically the framework in which I ran our One Day Unleash Your Greatness events. So it was great for me to do a lot of tests. I was testing the material. So this isn't me just sitting on a keyboard going, hope this works. It's I've ran through the processes, and the biggest thing that it finds is it just reconnects people with themselves. And that's, I think that's one of the biggest unfortunate circumstances that's happening in this world right now. Never have we been so connected yet disconnected in the same, sentence. So the book's framework, do you want me to go through that just to give it a quick overview?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure people have tweaked, because a lot of people listening are potentially in that job or wanting to start something. And I know a lot of people get in touch with me and they're like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this, or I'm thinking about doing this. And like I was saying to you about one of my tradie friends who's finally going to take the jump. It's not because he didn't have the skills. It was a lot of things that were blocking him. So let's jump into the framework.
It's the intrinsic motivation that's missing. It's okay to be externally and extrinsically motivated, like put in a CD, listen to a YouTube video of motivation. That's great. But you need the core internal motivation that drives you when no one else is around to tell you to get your butt off the couch, to get to the gym.
I mean, I was eating while watching My 600-Pound Life yesterday, so that happened to be on TV when I turned it on. So you might be intrinsically wanting to get thinner, but if you're watching someone who's in dire straits and you're still, I mean, I wasn't eating badly, but I mean, if you're still eating while you're watching something on telly, which I don't usually do, you probably need to realign some values there.
Yeah, and this is where the framework comes into play. It's based on 4 steps, 4 pillars. Number 1 is the discover phase, right? So you must discover truly where you currently are and who you truly are. Most people don't know who they truly are. If you ask the question, and I'll get you listening right now going, who am I? And if you have to sit there and think and go, geez, and it takes you a while to come up with who you actually are, it means, hey, you're just disconnected from that. We need to realign you and connect you with that. So it's about discovering what is the purpose. What is your purpose on this planet? Why are you here? What is that thing that you'd do for free for the rest of your life if money was not even an option? Don't worry about the how do you monetize it. That stuff's easy, right? And I know it doesn't, it's easy coming from me saying that, but, I come from a very, low socioeconomic background. I was the kid kicked out of school. I went and done an apprenticeship, so I've had a job. I know what it feels like, but also know what it feels like on the other side of the fence. And that's where the phase 1, the discover phase, is very, very important. The second phase is design, and that's where we look at designing your personal plan for greatness. We look at your surroundings. We design the life that you actually want to be living. When I first built my first ever house, I was 19 years old. I was earning it was about $7 an hour working as an apprentice cabinet maker, but I had this vision of I wanted to have a house. The only reason I thought that was why I wanted that was because my boss, who was the richest person around me in my life, I was like, I want to aspire to be like that, and I just discovered he had heaps of property. But when I got to that, I was like, okay, now I need to build a house. What's the first thing that I did? I created a plan. All right. Pretty straightforward, makes sense. Too many people are living life without a plan. It's like, what are your rules for life? How are you actually living life? And it's not until you actually present that to someone, they're like, actually, I actually don't have a rule. And this is a really random rule, but one of my many, if I'm ever in a lift, if I'm ever in an elevator and someone's in there, I have to talk to them. I have to say something. I have to ask how their day is. I have to say something. Because that's a rule I've created in my life. Why? Because it essentially when I first started it, I'd just do it naturally, and then I'd stop, and then I'd I started doing it to some people, and you could see them smiling, and they're being happy, etc. And that's purely because I want to live my life based on my own rules, and that is I want to bring joy, and I want to bring happiness, and I want to bring intention to every single moment that I'm in, because that's how serious I am about living a life of my own design. And for some people listening, go, "Oh, geez, Brett, you get a little bit carried away with that." I go, "No, I don't. Personally, I don't. I believe you're getting carried away with it if you're not doing it. Why not live with intention? Why not become more aware and actually get to look at the green tree and see the 10 different shades of green in it?" And it's not getting all woo-wooey. It's literally living to your design, living the life that you really want to be living. The third phase is the develop phase, and this is where you develop your best self. This is where you develop the skills, the attributes, the strategies on what you need to become, who you need to become, and then how do you actually go about executing that. And then the fourth phase is deliver, which is we look at the concept of, and this unfortunately is the biggest roadblock for most people. You might uncover who you are, you might design this perfect life, you'll develop yourself, developing your best self. And just so in the develop phase, there's 4 areas that you must develop. There's your psychology, your physiology, there's your personal knowledge, and then there's your productivity. So, your psychology is getting your mindset right, making sure you're thinking, making sure you're eliminating those bad habits, improving and creating good habits. Your physiology, right? The vessel that we get that is getting us through this planet. Too many of us are not looking after it properly. And I mean, I throw my hand up as well. I admit, at times there's a lot more I could be doing to help myself. But it's because we're not in this moment of awareness and really uncovering. Because you could be watching like you said, you could be watching a documentary on how, animal protein is killing you, for example. Yet whilst you're still eating a burger, you're like, oh yeah. There's that miscommunication from the fact and us enabling ourselves to be able to truly connect with that.
I mean, it's just the same with drugs, alcohol, smoking. Like I when I was back in the day, I had to do a placement when I was at university in the hospitals, and we're in the cardio wards, so emphysemas and lung disease and all that kind of stuff. And then they're going out for a ciggy. Or their kids have got a packet of smokes on them, and like you're kind of sitting there going, man, your mum or your dad or your grandparents are sitting there and their lungs are busted, and then you go out and have a smoke. Or to paint a massive broad stroke, the amount of nurses that were on that ward who, and like the big things were if you're overweight, if you're got poor diet, and if you smoke, and they'd go out at lunch, go to the canteen, get a chips, Coke, a pie, and go outside and sit out the front of the hospital and have a smoke. And you're like, what have you been doing all day?
Well, that's a really important point, because that's where we call the incongruency, right? You're living a life of what you perceive should be right, but you're living a totally different one. And that's where we want to come back and connect, and that's to develop. Before you can develop your physiology, you must develop your psychology, because it's your mind that gets you up off the couch to go to the gym. It's your mind that walks you to the fridge to pick up something and eat it, that cupcake on this, the second tier of your fridge. But it's your mind that actually put the cupcake there as well, right? So there's those 4 Ps, the 4 key areas in the develop, your psychology, physiology, your personal knowledge. And that's something, again, knowledge is power, but knowledge without execution is just words on paper. And then the 4th phase we look at here is deliver, which is, again, how do you actually execute it? What are your rules for life? And how do you go out there and live to your full potential? So it's a simple 4-step framework. So when I actually sat down and write it, it was like, okay, so I've got these 4 key pillars. What are the key pillars that follow underneath the discover, then the design, then the develop and deliver? And and I'm saying that purely from a writing aspect of how someone could literally sit down and write their own book, and get their message out. The biggest thing is, how do you take all this amazing information in your head, and then how do you articulate it so that someone could understand it? And one of the biggest things I do, with the book and with Authority Academy, all of those things, every product and service I ever create now is based around how could I get this, sort of complex message and simplify it so that me, when I was reading my first book, could truly understand it. And how it doesn't matter what intellect level you're at. It's I've had friends here who run multi-million-dollar businesses go through this and just have amazing transformations just from some of the strategies. Because this book is not just philosophy. I share a bit of my story, some of the hardships, those type of things, but more so to elicit and reiterate points of what I'm talking about in the book. But it's full of practical. Try this, do this, have a go at this. So you can see for yourself, because I could sit there and talk about it till the cows come home, but you need to go out there and see action.
And I mean, it's like the likes of people like Anthony Robbins and stuff like that. You could go to something of his every year, and when it's a framework, it's applying to you then. As in, that's what it sounds like with your book. Is somebody who's just starting out or somebody who's at the top level. It's forcing them to, no, not forcing them, but allowing them to have a look at what they're doing and why they're doing it. And if they change it, that they can have these massive changes. And it's something that you're probably going to consistently go through as you level up. You go up to the next level and you go, why am I only on this level? Why am I not on the next level?
Yeah, 100%. And the thing with that is that I think, if we're not to classify, people on a higher level, they benefit the most as well, because there's so many other things that they're neglecting to try and remain on that high level. So this is, about how do we bring back that, I don't really like the word balance, because balance means something different to every single human being. Balance doesn't mean equilibrium on every single modality. It's all in line with your values. For when I first started business, my values were peaking with business. My friendship value was lower because I didn't have time for many friends. I still hung out with friends, but you can't bring back equilibrium in every single aspect of your life. That's just a fallacy. You need to uncover what does balance look like for you, right? Set your rules. That's what it looks like. And then go and execute. Dr. John Demartini, right? He's the perfect example of this. His highest three values that he talks about is speaking, traveling, and education. That's all he does. There's no surprise that he doesn't have a home. There's no surprise that he's traveling every single week. He's on airplanes. But that's what balance is to him. So we need to, as take personal responsibility ourselves, set what that actually looks like and then go and execute it. Because there's no point executing a plan that isn't there. And that's what most people are doing. They're just executing every single day, but they don't know what the hell they're executing.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like when you say that, one of my property mentors, he said, the majority of people buy and hope. Yeah, they buy a home and they hope that it goes up. And they got no freaking plan. They put a plan in when things start going wrong. Yeah,
exactly.
And the majority of people don't even do that with their lives, which is a scary thought. You're at your job, you hate it. Oh, well, I'll just keep hating it and hope that it gets better.
Yeah, I think most people are living the life by society's rules. Now, I'm not saying go out there and break rules. I'm not, don't go break the law, because the law's there for a reason. But there's many society rules, and I was talking with Jack the other day in his book. He talks about OPRs, other people's rules. I think it's a massive concept. Too many people are living other people's rules. Create your own.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because if people start, it can be family and friends or saying, oh, you haven't done this, or you haven't got this, or blah blah blah. I don't if I do that, it's not going to make me happy. It's going to make you happy.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't give a shit about. I do give a shit about other people's happiness, but not in the sacrifice for my own.
No, not at all. Yeah. And that's where it comes back to again, is being confident within yourself and being aware of how you're actually living every single day. Because when you're aware, you pick those things up and you don't sort of bend yourself to societal rules. You go, hold on a minute, this doesn't fit with me right now. This doesn't work. I'll share with you. I watched a video last night, and there was an experiment, and there was say 15 people sitting in a waiting room, and 14 of them were all actors. One person was the test. They were testy. They didn't know what was happening. She thought she was just going to see a doctor. And what happened was a buzzer went off in the room, and all 14 people stood up. There's one girl sitting on the seat looking around going, oh, geez, what's happening? Everyone sat back down. The buzzer went back up. She's looking around going, oh, geez, what's going on? Stayed seated. The buzzer went off the third time. Everyone stood up, and then she stood up. And then she sat back down. Buzzer went off again. Everyone stood up. The doctor came in, took one person out into the room. That kept happening until she was the last person sitting in the room. She was the last person sitting in the room, and the buzzer went off. What do you think she did?
Stood up.
She stood up.
Oh,
So she sat
brilliant.
back down. But wait. And then another person actually comes into the doctor's waiting room. This person was not an actor. They were an actual person as well. And he sits down, a couple of seats away from her. The buzzer goes off. She stands up. He's sitting there looking at her going, oh, what's going on? She sits down, and he goes to her, why are you standing up? And she goes, I don't know. I've seen everybody else standing, so I just thought I'd do it. And he's like, oh, okay. And then the buzzer goes off. Guess what happens? They both stand up.
Oh,
And this happens until the entire waiting room is filled. Until the entire waiting room is filled and everyone's standing up and sitting down together. Look at the power of that, right? That started out of absolutely nothing. It was just people mirroring what everyone else is doing on this planet. And I just choose and decide to, not be that person, right? Here's another example. We flew to Bali it would have been a few months ago. Went to Bali, and there was a real big line in Bali, okay, to get in through the customs. And people were all lining up. I was like, what's that? Geez, that's a long line. That's going to take a lot of time. But yet there was another gate next, a couple of meters to the side of it. And I was like, shit, no one's there. I was like, let's just go down and have a look. Boom, straight down through the gate. Because people weren't standing there, other people didn't think that they could stand there.
Yeah.
Right, and I mean, I could go through dozens of examples of things like that where if you start taking your own initiative and control of your own life right now, then life's going to be so much greater for you. I mean, tell me, would you rather stand in a line in Bali or would you rather just walk down? Of course.
Yeah.
Right?
It's an absolute no-brainer. I think that's a perfect place to, leave people with, is that thought of, start taking action on your life right now. And speaking of right now, where can people get your book if they want to get their hands on it?
So they could pick up a copy of the hardcover book as this episode is airing for $9.95 plus shipping and handling. So for less than $20, you can pick up a hardcover book at brettcampbell.net/book. So you go to brettcampbell.net/book. And I'm actually giving away $197 worth of bonuses to whoever picks up a copy pre-release. So official launch date, published date of the book is October 18th, but I know we're going to be able to get your audience to be able to get their hands on a copy a little bit earlier than that. So pre-launch, I'm giving away some massive bonuses as well. So go over and pick it up. I look forward to just continuing the conversation, mate, and I can't wait to get a copy in your hands as well.
Yeah, well, I'll be definitely getting in on that, and I hope everyone else does. So we'll link all of it if you're driving or whatever at the moment to passiveincomeyoung.com. And I look forward to watching the book climb the charts, but more importantly, just impact a lot of people, because I know that's what you're doing, Brett, and it's awesome to watch and be a very small part of.
Yeah, mate, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me on the show and sharing this message, because, I truly do believe that it's not until you look at adversity, you look at life, look in the mirror, take a good hard look at ourselves and ask yourself, am I living to my full potential? Am I happy? Am I 100% happy with what's happening right now in my life? And if not, you have an opportunity to make change. And I know that this book can be a stepping stone for that, so I can't wait for anyone who picks it up to go through it.
Wicked. Thanks so much, mate.
Thanks for listening to the Youngpreneurs Podcast. This was proudly brought to you by the Podcast Institute, the #1 training resource to take your business from chasing leads to leads chasing you, and from an absolute amateur to a full-blown authority. If you're looking to take your business to the next level, then a podcast is the obvious answer. You can get national and global exposure in a very fast time, and it's just exactly what I've done with this podcast. So if you want to find out more, get a checklist on how you can get started for under $60, and to find out more through a small training video that I've prepared for you all, then please check out passiveincomeyoung.com/podcast training.